Hello all, Stacy the Black Feather Intuitive, and welcome to Black Feather Couture, Divining a VIP Life. And I'm so excited today to be doing kind of a special little card reading for all of us today. And I have my cohort, Keone, that's going to be joining in a few minutes. Today, we are celebrating a fabulous icon, a divine feminine icon that you would really have to live under a rock to not know. And we are celebrating the fabulous Marilyn Monroe's birthday. And she is June 1st. She is or was a Gemini. And I have to say to you, choosing to connect with Marilyn Monroe's energy is something that it never occurred to me kind of as, tapping into my psychic energy to do that, but I have always been drawn to her. I've always been fascinated by her. As a kid and a preteen and a teen, I read a lot of books on her. I don't know if they were, appropriate or accurate or not, but I went through a phase where I just could not get enough of learning about her life and thinking, the tragedy of it all. And now, as a woman, growing up in this world and seeing things from a different perspective and evaluating that era that she came from, my heart just breaks for her. My heart breaks for her with, what she went through with fame and as a woman and as an iconic figure. I would venture to say that maybe she was a little bit starseed and she was a trailblazer and didn't have a ton of support to be able to come on to this planet at the time that she was. This planet didn't deserve her. And I think it's wonderful that we still today, after all of these years, the younger generations know who Marilyn Monroe is. So I think that is very fitting and telling for the impact that she made. So, Keone, are you here? Are you available?
Absolutely not. I am here. And I am very much available out there. I didn't know we were doing a dating segment, so I wasn't quite prepared. But no,
We are doing a dating segment. That's exactly what this is about.
I I am here. But before I get into questions and give my spill, for those who don't know who Marilyn Monroe is, just like Walter Mercado, Netflix did a special on her. So
Oh,
let's just watch. Yeah,
oh,
let's watch the
I'm
trailer.
behind the times. I need to get caught up then. I would love to watch that.
Uh-oh, we're gonna have the Stacy Keone movie night number 2, huh? All right, let's see the trailer.
How do you go about writing a life story?
The true things rarely get into circulation. Usually the false things.
I wanna be loved by you.
In 1982,
Los Angeles reopened the case of Marilyn Monroe's death.
After 20 years, it's time to clear up this case once and for all.
I couldn't aspire
the interviews have never been heard until now.
to anything higher.
Well, I hope your phone is clean.
Everything connects with the person.
I'm gonna pause right there. So it's starting off, of course, on the moment that people most want to know is the mysterious circumstances around her death, and just that part with the recording playing where it says, "I hope your phone is clean." I will never understand the amount of people that text or will say incriminating things out loud, or with the ability to have what we call a receipt on what you said. Isn't that just amazing?
I have to say to you that it brings me comfort that we now are in a space and a place where I think a lot, because so much has been exposed, because we are now in an era and an age of false information being touted as truth. It's encouraging because it forces everyone to dive in and determine for yourself and discern for yourself what is truth and what is not. But you're right. My ex-husband, he's a privacy and security wizard. Like that's his specialty. And, for years he's been, like, you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't say that. And we have to protect this and we have to do that. And I would just be like, I just want to get in there and do the shit that I need to do. Like, I'm not that important that somebody's gonna, be really overly interested in anything that I have to say or do, on my private line. But I'm understanding now, given where we're at, how important it really is. And, she was taken advantage of in those ways. And I think about Monica Lewinsky's story and how terrible they were with her and recording her and all that kind of stuff. It's crazy. I hate the idea that we have to live constantly editing ourselves and being concerned about what we have to say. I'd rather just live very authentically. But I believe that we are in transition with that. And it's kind of a weird place to be. I don't know if that answers your question.
You can
be on a tangent.
You can if you don't care. Well, the one thing I always say, because people always say we live in the world, and I always tell people we've always lived in that world. It's just the access is too much. We've always lived in a world of false information and propaganda, and we'll tell you the way it happened so you can believe it that way. It's just now the ability. No one has to print out 1 million leaflets anymore to do that. No one has to send letters to everyone to do that or try to get it to your local news station. Now it's just the ability to widespread that information. Anyway, you can go in a library and be able to find books that eventually came off the shelf because the information was false. So it's just the way to get it sent has always been different. But, that's just part of her. We're going to get a lot of it. Here we go.
But particularly hers,
To make you my own.
To get to people with information about the night Marilyn died, it was difficult.
let it be. I can't say anything, and I knew it all.
I did what you always have to do if you meet a dead end. I went back to the beginning. Marilyn and the truth. It's like going into the lion's den. And I indeed found out things which had not been found out before.
I like to state here and now, fame is fickle.
Wow.
You're now famous fickle. The interesting thing about Marilyn Monroe, and a lot of people don't know this, is she's actually an extremely boring person.
How so?
Every friend, family member, associate, and person of love interest would tell you she was about as interesting as watching paint dry. But and I use this when I'm coaching, actors that I work with, when a camera would flip up in an instant, she'd turn into Marilyn Monroe.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Bam. That persona was her persona. Because I use that to talk to actors, because some people go, well, I'm not really interesting. I said, you don't have to be. The person you are portraying that you are to everyone else has to be. So she's one of those people that would flip as soon as the camera came up, whether it's video, whether it was a photo. It's like she'd be like this, and camera whips up, and I can't look like her, but glamour, pop.
Yeah.
She's one of those people you would not catch her outside with a bonnet on her head and a house coat.
Yeah.
This has meant everything.
I wonder though, just some food for thought. Maybe I know she was adopted, so there's a lot of that abandonment issue stuff, and I'm actually not sure if she admitted to this or not. I think she did, but there was a lot of sexual abuse in her past as well. And that does something to a child, and that does something to a person when they are, forming themselves and forming their identity. I don't know, maybe that she was supposed to be kind of a boring or simple person. I think she was locked inside of herself, and the movie star quality allowed her to play out aspects of her that maybe she did not feel safe to access in her real life. I've never heard that about the boring. I'm not saying you're wrong. I've just never heard that about the boring, but psychically, that feels a little bit like that was probably more of she was trapped in her own, like, for safety.
Or and that could be a psychological reason, or that could have just been her.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because Robert did a lot of. There's a couple people like that. Robert De Niro, he's not the guy that we see in movies. He's very introverted. He's very calm. He's very dialed down. He's very paced when he speaks, but he has that other side of him where it flips. Maybe, and it happens the other way. Some people feel that when they are, touched with when they were younger, that actually made them more promiscuous. It opened them up early. So it could be the flip side. It could be that Marilyn Monroe character was a result of what happened.
Yeah.
So we never know. Everybody that's listening, we're not psychiatrists, we're not psychologists.
No. This is just just curious questions, and I think it's important for us to be curious. And we have that advantage right now because she did transition a long time ago, and so I don't feel that we are disparaging her memory or her honor. I feel instead, and what I hope to do in this reading, in this segment, is to honor her, because I thought she was incredible, and I could really identify with so much of what she went through, being a woman, a young girl, like, you're sexualized all the time. And I grew up being afraid of men and afraid of my own sexuality. And it was a lot to get through. And what I have learned, I know not everybody purports to the fake it till you make it. That happened to work really well for me. And that's one of the reasons I think that I was drawn to the theater and drawn to the stage so often, because I could step into a character and a role, and it wasn't the insecure, underconfident, wish I was invisible up against the wall Stacy. I could be, this other thing and sort of explore and expand that. And
with her, I felt it. There are certain people that were built to handle things that everyone else can't handle. And when it comes to the stuff, like, I'm not gonna really get into it heavily, like the drug use, which it happens a lot when you get to stages. I think the drug use was more about the day-to-day, the stress, the having to keep up appearances. I think she reveled in she knew who she was, and she knew what she commanded, and some people love that aspect, especially if they're in control of it. There can be things that inflict others, but if you're one who you have them on your finger and you can control it, and everyone's at your whim, it's a total different experience. So, the only one that could tell us is really her, but the second close to that is you. So let's go ahead and get started with that. My first question is, it was just kind of crazy because I said, who was the real Marilyn Monroe beneath the fame, imminent illusion? Okay, who was the real Marilyn Monroe?
Oh, I love that. So just for anyone who's interested, I'm going to pull from the Chromatic Fates Tarot. I chose this deck because it's a collaboration deck. It's got a bit of whimsy, which I feel was a lot of who Norma Jean was. And Marilyn Monroe, the persona or the character of Marilyn Monroe, also exuded a lot of whimsy within her sexuality. There was just so much depth to what she presented. And this deck does that. Lots of color. It's all about, sort of the prismatic colors. So.
That was so funny because growing up, when Elton John did the, it turned into Diana Ross's song, but it was Goodbye Norma Jean.
Yeah.
And because of course he knew her. And when the song came out, I'm like, who the hell is Norma Jean? I was a kid. I'm like, who the hell is Norma Jean? So this pull is designed to reveal her true soul essence or inner world.
Oh my God, we got 10 of coins. So 10 of coins or 10 of pentacles is legacy. It's the culmination of the dreams, the aspirations, the inspirations that comes into the tangible, into the physical. And what I love about this card is I had to look at it carefully because I thought it was a royalty card. I thought it was a queen. And I was like, oh my God, of course it would be the queen. And I thought, well, maybe it's Queen of Pentacles. No, it's the 10 of coins, the 10 of Pentacles. And that speaks volumes because who was she? Who was Marilyn Monroe? To us, she was the legacy. And especially for women, she represented the thing we all wanted to be, perhaps in an unhealthy way, to attract a mate or a partner. I have a theory on that. I believe that, the sort of that divine feminine energy when you're dealing with patriarchal stuff that we are moving out of. The idea was women were pitted against other women because our rights were taken away from being able to work to earn our own living and our own money. So we had to kind of hitch our caboose to, the best eligible man who could support us and take care of us. And Marilyn Monroe came at a time when that was still prevalent, but that she was able to kind of take it up a notch and be in control of some of her own choices and decisions. Now, obviously, she still lived in the patriarchy, hence why, the legacy is the way that it is. But that's who Marilyn Monroe was. She wanted to leave her legacy. So talking about Norma Jean did not feel special, attractive, did not feel that she could take care of herself, did not feel confident enough to live on her own without connecting to that male energy for attention and support and foundation and all of those things. But Marilyn Monroe commanded the attention from the patriarchy. She left a legacy behind. And I think that's really interesting, Keone, your question around this, kind of what we were talking about a little bit earlier. It is that persona piece. She left her legacy, and she did it in such a way that she was generous. She was generous of spirit. She was generous with her time. She was generous with her money. She was generous. And the 10 of coins, or the 10 of pentacles, is a card of generosity and legacy and coming full circle. It's a culmination of those dreams, goals, and desires coming into the physical and the tangible. And it's an evaluation. Enjoy the fruits of the labor. Let you come and enjoy the fruits of my labor. Let's celebrate together. And there's so much in abundance that I can also put some aside to invest in a future endeavor. And I mean, after, 50, 60, however many years from her birth, she's still an icon. She's still relevant. Her story is still relevant.
Right. Let's look into her energy and inner state in her final days with the question of what emotional or spiritual weight was she carrying at the time of her passing? What emotional or spiritual weight was she carrying at the time of her passing?
The Empress, she had created this persona and kind of backed herself into a bit of a corner. She was the person who had the abundance. She had all of the tools, the things at her fingertips, everything she could possibly want and need, but she felt so alone. And the Empress energy, and typically in the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot, you see a depiction of the Empress being pregnant, getting ready to birth something new, to birth something different, and being very much in that Venus energy where you've got the finance, you've got the food, you've got the roof over your head. But you also have a lot of people who are coming to you now for handouts. You've got people that are coming to you that are not, I want to say, at your level. They're not your equal. And it can feel very lonely, very isolating. For those of you who identify, little hoobity floop here, for those of you who identify as star seeds, there is a component of isolation to our lives because we are few and far between. You know, you can interact and connect with all sorts of people, and you can connect at a certain level, but there is a limit to what that is unless you're connecting with someone that is truly like-minded, like-hearted, you know, like-souled. And not saying, you know, better or worse. It's just like anyone else. When you find common ground with someone and you can finish each other's sentences and you know what the other person is feeling and thinking about just by looking at them without having to say anything, you know, that is, that's a miracle. That's a gift. That is not something to be taken for granted. Marilyn Monroe, quite frankly, just didn't have that. She never felt as though she was truly understood. She felt always like she had to present herself, and Norma Jean, presenting herself in order to be able to stay safe, in order to stay relevant. She was the persona. And I sound like a broken record, but I feel like that is the birth of Marilyn Monroe, was her way of surviving. And she bit off a little more than she could chew because now everybody wants a piece of her. She's got all of this stuff and people view that. And instead of them doing the work to achieve their own, to get where they want to be, they want a piece of her. They want a piece of that star quality, that star action. And I feel like it got her into trouble. So on that emotional, you said emotional and spiritual, where she was at, I feel like she was feeling extremely isolated, extremely, like, how do I say it? Like so different that there was a depression, such a deep depression that she did not know how to rise out of. Because if you feel truly that you are the only soul on this planet of, 3 billion people, who thinks the way you think, understands things the way that you understand them, perceives things, has these deep experiences or these deep emotions, and you try to explain yourself or to seek connection and you get crickets over and over and over and over again, it can really mess with your sense of self, your sense of what matters. And I'm just getting, as I'm talking about this, the persona of Marilyn Monroe and Norma Jean as Marilyn Monroe never felt like what she was contributing really mattered. She thought it was all a bit of a farce, kind of a little bit ridiculous. She liked the fame at first. She liked the attention that it brought, but she recognized very quickly that it was empty. It didn't really get her the things that she really wanted, which was love and respect for who she was as a person. So that, I just want to say, it's the isolation, the feeling like there's not another soul on this planet that can ever begin to understand me, can ever connect, give me the connection, the mutual connection that I seek. And God, that's so sad. Like, it just breaks my heart for her. There's pomegranates in this depiction as well. Pomegranates are the kind of like the fruit of the devil. It's the underworld energy. So as above, so below. And I think she dabbled in the shadow. She looked for life in the shadow because she did not always find life in the sun, in the light. And I think that's what got her into a little bit of trouble. She was never able to kind of find her core.
Never mind. I'm not a reader. I have different I have different opinions on some of the things, and it's just really hard when you don't know someone personally, when you're not an intuitive, or if you're not someone who's around. You just formulate your own opinions based on only thing you can, what you've seen and what you've
Yeah.
heard,
On
right?
your own experience. Yeah, we all experience our lives through our own personal lens.
Yep. And that's why I wear shades. Hidden influences, pressures, or relationships playing a role. So the question that kind of dives into hidden influences, pressures, or relationships playing a role are, what was not seen by the public or media at the time? And that you kind of got a lot of that answered in the last card pull that you did. You know, kind of what we talked about, kind of what you said in those things of people assuming, how she's doing based on what they see her doing in an entertainment light, based on how, and that's again that camera. Remember, I talked about how her persona would light up as soon as a camera or picture. She could be having the worst day of her life, and a camera pops up, and she's like, "Oh my God, this woman is always happy, and she's always having an amazing time."
Well, I imagine you understand that, being a performer and working in the industry, we develop a switch. There's a switch that you're like, okay, I'm in my space, and now suddenly, for whatever reason, whether it's there is a camera in my face and it's rolling action, or whether it's you recognizing, oh my God, I can't just be myself in this moment. I've been recognized and I need to whatever. We have a switch that gets
Well,
flipped.
mine
I
is
know I
different.
do. What's
Mine
that?
is different. It didn't happen for me there. Mine was more so on regular day to day things at work or when I'm teaching a class.
Hmm.
Because anytime somebody would show up to work, or especially in a classroom setting when I'd have a student and they'd be in their funk, and I'm like, listen, have you ever seen me? She goes, well, you don't have bad days. And I just laughed. I said, you've never seen it, because I could have the worst day of my life. 5 people that I'm close to could die in the same plane crash, and 2 seconds before this camera comes on and I have to coach you guys, it's going to be, hello everybody, it's Coach Keone. All right, today we're going over emotions, body languages, and how to condition those. And then after that meeting is over, I'll go back to crying and being an
And we
emotional
fall
wreck.
apart. Yeah.
It's compartmentalizing. It's having the ability to switch it on and off. And I think it used to be a lot easier for men because we were all taught how to stow that shit.
Yeah. You weren't allowed to cry. You weren't allowed to feel.
And so how to, hey, put that over here. But what we learned from people like Michael Jordan, from people like Bill Burr, from those type of people, no, take it and use it, even if you're not showing it.
Yeah.
Use it, not just put it here and let it fester.
Yeah.
So that's when it really would happen the most. That persona or that click would happen. It would be more for me in day-to-day settings. Because entertainment, I always looked at it as a job.
Yeah.
So, and entertainment's easy because I'll go back to what you were saying, is because that's a character. I don't have to be me,
Right.
like you were saying. The funny story, and I'll be quick. One of my first movies for one of my students, I actually had to pay her romantic interest.
Oh,
And at the end of the series, we finally kissed, and she just could not do it. She could not do it. She could not do it. We tried it like 30 times. The director said, "What's the problem?" She's like, "Well, he was my acting coach for like 2 years. It's weird." And I was like, "Listen," and I said her name. I'm not going to say it now. You are not kissing Keone. Jenga is kissing Dorian. Just be
right.
Jenga. I don't want to kiss you either.
Right.
But Dorian wants to kiss you. So I
Yes.
gotta kiss you.
Yes.
So it's one of those things.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that persona flip for sure. Before I flip over the card that I chose for your question, I want to just kind of tap in a little bit, because I feel like she had a number of significant relationships around her that were deeply influencing her. And I feel like each one of them pulled her further and further away from her ability to be seen and express who she was at the time. I feel like there was just a lot of silencing. There was a lot of suppression, and there was overt suppression, but I feel like there was also, and maybe it was the way that she was raised, her experiences, but I feel that she was predisposed to, and women in that era were just predisposed to this as well, that yeah, you could have an opinion, but that opinion didn't really matter. You know, you were allowed to say it, but at the end of the day, someone else a male someone else could override that. And, you know, you were able to say what you needed to say, but you weren't able to actualize it. And I feel like there's a male energy. It might have been her agent.
I don't think so.
Or manager that I'm feeling psychically really caused a lot of like, okay, yeah, gaslighting. Yeah, you can do this and this and this, but oh, wait, did you think about that and that and that and how it's going to affect this person and that person and the other person? And so it's like it takes the wind out of your sails where you start to feel badly about your idea, or someone emotionally manipulates you onto the path that they really want you to be on, but they do it smiling, you know, to your face and sort of stabbing you in the back. And I feel like there was a lot of that was happening in her world, especially 6 months before her death. So I don't know if that's true or not. I'm just, you know, from a psychic perspective, that's what I'm tapping into.
I think that was more towards the end. The thing that a lot of people miss is that certain people back in the day, you think of a person like Mae West, you think of certain people, those women in that time could command the room and command what to do.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those people. And I think no one had to tell her a lot of things. A lot of things she knew she couldn't do for 3 reasons. One, because of Marilyn Monroe, the persona. Mm-hmm. She never wanted Marilyn to look weak. You never thought of in her height going, oh my God, that poor woman. You know, she never wanted that to be a look of her persona. Number 2, she was very well aware of who she was either dating or hanging out with.
Oh, sure. Mm-hmm.
Right. And she couldn't be Marilyn Monroe dating John the Butcher.
Right.
You know? And then number 3, the reason why I say certain people is we looked at that snippet that she said at the end of the Netflix. Certain people can't, it sounds like such a normal thing she said, but certain people can't get away with saying that.
Mm-hmm.
There is no follow-up. She said what she needed to say sometimes and moved on, and there was no follow-up to that question. But here's the sad thing, and it's always been that way. When you're beautiful, you're allowed to do that, whether you're a man or a woman. It's amazing to me the people that will get a pass because of how attractive they are. Mm. And it's kind of, sadly, it's always been that way. Think about my historical background, slavery. If you were a good-looking slave, you didn't go to the field.
Right.
You went in the house. If you were good-looking, you were attractive.
Yeah.
You know? And it's just like, I mean, that's still not great, but it's like you're put in there because of your physical attributes. Yeah. The eye candy, easy on the eyes. So, and I think what I'm saying and you're saying is different, but we come to the same conclusion towards the end, because no matter if it happened the way you said it or I said it, both resulted in the use of drugs and the use of everything else that came towards the end.
Oh, sure. Coping mechanisms. You know, we all have our vices. When we are not honoring or able to honor ourselves and our own needs, we look to other things to fill that void.
And I also don't know if it's because it could also be this. Because, you know, we always think we know everybody, and especially if they have the great persona, is maybe her not being at the peak or the height that she used to be took a toll. Because some of them, that's the issue. You're not.
And how sad, like she was in her like mid 30s for God's sake, and like the bloom is off the rose. I have no tolerance for that bullshit. I'm like, okay, you know what? Like, fuck all y'all.
Well, in that case,
Like there's so much life to be lived, and shame on people for the ageism, especially towards women, because men don't have that. Men can be fat and homely as hell, and out there in the world doing all sorts of crazy shit, and they still get people that think their shit doesn't stink and they're amazing and awesome. And you get a woman who is 40 or 50, and all of a sudden she's an old hag. Oh God.
Yeah, it depends on what side of the fence you're on, Stacey. That doesn't work in my world. Like at work, I used to always tell Jennifer, "Oh my God, I'm old and fat." She's like, at the time, she's like, "You're 35," and you. I said, "Yeah, I'm straight thin, but I'm gay fat. You don't understand. It's different over here. It's different. It's a totally different world. You're a has-been at 28, okay?"
Right. Right. Sure. I think as a society, we just need to shift that. And I think Marilyn Monroe's story can help us with that.
It's shifted a lot now that people, one, look younger as they're older, and people are living longer. You got to remember that time, the average age was still, in the mid 60s.
Yes.
And when we were growing, remember this, Stacey, when you were young, a 55-year-old looked like they were on the way out.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we are living in a very different energy.
Yeah.
Very.
We got 55-year-olds that look, younger than people did when they were 35 back then, even though they ate better. I think it's the manual and physical labor and stressors of life.
Oh yeah, with harder life. We have kind of a more cushy life for sure. Well, I just want to show here the card for this around the relationships is the Page of Swords, and I love this because the Page of Swords seeks clarity. The Page of Swords is very curious. And I feel like Marilyn Monroe or Norma Jean was a very curious person. And the relationships, because she did need that attention and approval and validation from men in particular, she was putting herself in, quite frankly, in harm's way a lot of times with these different relationships that she kept seeking the clarity, like, I'm curious, is this the one that's going to see me finally for who I am and to understand me? And I feel like she never actually got the clarity that she was seeking because she was seeking validation for her own desires, but she always got clarity around how this person is not my equal. This person is not what I'm actually seeking out. In many ways, especially for her age, she was still seeking to find out who she was. And sometimes when we're in that phase, we throw a lot of spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. And that's why one of the reasons why I feel psychically that she went through the relationships that she did. There was always a seeking. That's a psychological thing. But I feel also like she was trying to find herself through these relationships. And quite frankly, there are very few individuals on this planet who don't do that. That is, I want to say, kind of a natural part of the way that we learn ourselves is through the reflection that we see shining back at us from the interactions that we have with others, whether that's through romantic partnership or friendships or otherwise, work relationships. The connection with people is what helps us to determine who we want to be. And I don't know that she ever really found that validation. Like, I think she knew who she wanted to be on the inside, but felt that was not enough. It wasn't good enough. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but that Page of Swords, she was in a space of curiosity, and that curiosity just kept getting it's the wah, like you're so excited about this opportunity, and maybe this is the thing that's going to help me to feel something. And then, it turns out to be the same as everything else. And you're just like, okay, I guess that wasn't. And it can create sort of that defeatist attitude. Again, isolation. There's something wrong with me. The rest of the world is fine with all this other nonsense and shenaniganery. I'm the only one who's not. So therefore, there's something wrong with me.
All right. Let's go into an evolution of healing, a message from the other side. What has Marilyn's spirit learned or experienced since her passing? Ooh, that's a very interesting question.
Oh, I love it.
How are you going to answer that?
And I just was told to pull 2 cards for that. She's learned that there's more power in simplicity than there was in all of the grandiosity. And I keep seeing this blue. I feel like what she's kind of learning on that soul journey is the power of alchemy. She knew how to work it on a physical level to draw people to her, but she wasn't able to do it at the same level on a personal level for herself. So her persona knew how to alchemize and utilize energy, but Norma Jean did not. And I feel like she's learning how to blend those energies. Wholeness is the word that I would use. Wholeness. She's exploring wholeness because her whole world, it's funny you talked about compartmentalization, Keone, and of course I want to say everything in moderation is healthy. Sometimes compartmentalization is necessary in order for us to do what we need to do on a temporary basis, right? Her whole life was lived compartmentally. And that, I want to say, just kind of eroded away her sense of wholeness or connectedness to the world. So I feel like that's what her soul is learning. So let's just see what cards we got. Yeah. 6 of Cups, nostalgia, being in the past, connecting on a more innocent level. And the Norma Jean, if you ever saw her talking from the persona, talking from her own self, the Norma Jean, where, if the Marilyn Monroe ever sort of dropped a little bit and you got to see behind the curtain, there was an innocence, there was a naivete that I feel like she would have enjoyed exploring a bit more. But again, she never felt safe enough to be in that space. She always had to be something other. So I feel like her soul journey is also learning how to bring some of that innocence, because it's the wholeness, right? It's the connectedness. That was the part that I feel like she would have liked to have learned a little bit more. She would have liked to have leaned into that a little bit more, but didn't have the opportunity, never felt safe. And then we have, interesting. We have 6 of Coins. Wow, 2 6s. So that's significant because that's like a master number. 6s are all about harmony, balance, and alignment to your true path. And I feel like from a soul perspective, that is what she is learning, is more alignment. Again, compartmentalization works temporarily, but it's not a solution long term because it keeps us disconnected from ourself and source. And the 6 of Coins is really interesting because it's a card of generosity. It's also a card of reinvestment. And it's clarity around what you would like to reinvest in. A reinvestment implies that you had an experience with investing something in the past, and the reinvestment is suggesting that you're going to be doing something similar again. But it requires a bit of review. And I feel like, especially with all this green that's coming up into the mix, that's where her growth was. Her soul coming onto this planet at this time did not allow her the opportunity to review and evaluate the experience that she had in her lifetime here as Marilyn Monroe. Was the experiment, was the, okay, I'm going to have this experience and then I'm going to take the step back and I'm going to observe. I'm going to notice so that the next time around, I'm going to reinvest differently. I'm going to reinvest, I want to say, with a little more intention, awareness. You don't know what you don't know until you know it. And then when you know better, you do better. So this life was a little bit of the throw spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. The next incarnation will be different. Wow, she's aligning her soul at this time. And she really is bringing in more of that, that innocence and wonder, but also that, I'm going to say, sort of a calculated risk. And it's really aligning her to what her soul really wants to express.
The impact of her energy in modern times on beauty, fame, femininity, or power. How is she still influencing or guiding people today? I love this question because we've talked a lot about her past, and this question forces us to talk about, now get back into the, more positive aspect of what she did for people. Because I use this in class where I always say these three people, no matter what age you are, and they only have one name that they go by when we talk about branding. And if I say these three names, no matter how old you are, you know these names. And that's Cher.
Mm-hmm.
4 names, I'm sorry. Cher, Madonna,
Mm-hmm.
Beyonce.
Mm-hmm.
Say those 3 names, no matter your age, you know exactly who I'm talking about. Now, Marilyn Monroe, of course, doesn't have one name. We can say Marilyn, but everybody knows who Marilyn Monroe is.
Yes.
Just as much as everybody knows who Betty Boop is. No, I'm just kidding. Everybody knows who Marilyn Monroe is. So I love the fact that sometimes there's people in the past, whether it's 20, 30, 40 years ago, and they still have an influence. So that's the question. How is she still influencing or guiding people today, especially in modern times, on beauty, fame, femininity, and power?
Wow. So we have the Emperor. And it's interesting because we had pulled the Empress earlier, and now we've got the Emperor. And she is informing and influencing us. The Empress is the divine feminine, and the Emperor is the divine masculine. And the divine masculine energy says, I don't need anyone's permission to be who I am, to do what I want to do. And I feel that she, because she did not have full control over her life and the things that were going on in her life, and she could use her energy to a certain extent and her power to a certain extent, but felt powerless in a lot of other ways, she is stepping in to people's lives from the other side and saying, you don't need anyone's permission. If you want to wear that lipstick and rock it, rock it out. If you want to wear that dress, rock it out. If you want to start a YouTube channel and, talk about your passion for oranges, then do it, and do it with confidence, and do it with style, do it with class. She, I feel, influences us when we see her, when we see images of her. It invokes within us like, oh, wow, she's so beautiful. She was able to do a lot. And so it's let me bring that beauty out, because that gives me the energy, the impetus to, and the motivation to make my dreams come to life as well. For those of us who see those reflections and see ourselves as lacking or lesser than, I feel that she comes through with the Emperor to say, it's time to take a look within. Do what you need to do for you from within. Heal yourself and then go out into the world. You don't want an Emperor who is unhealthy making decisions for you. So she's influencing you as well through her own story to say, take a look at the role that you're playing in your own life, and how can you take action to elevate yourself, because you don't need anyone's permission to be who you want to be, but you do need to give yourself that permission and that space to be who you want to be. Wow. And I love that this card in particular, the Emperor, is an owl. So owls are very wise. There's a wise energy to the owl. So using your wisdom, applying the wisdom that you've learned. You know, I'm famous for saying wisdom is a freaking nothing burger unless you actually apply it. You can have all of these wonderful experiences and learn all sorts of stuff from it. But if you don't actually apply it for the next time that a situation comes up, you just keep on the hamster wheel, right? You just keep doing the same thing over and over again, and you don't grow. And I feel that that's what she's encouraging us to do.
A message for those who feel connected to her energy. Advice, comfort, or inspiration from her legacy or spirit.
This is a really good one. Because I think there is such a fascination with her. And, you know, what would you want to hear from her? You know, given where you're at and what you're processing and what you're going through. 5 of Coins. Let the small shit go. Don't allow anxiety to dictate your choices, your actions, how you choose to move forward. You know, in this particular depiction, we see the wolf in this beautiful green cloak. And the feeling here, a wolf can be an opportunist. We often think about, you know, Red Riding Hood and the wolf. We think of the wolf as, you know, a character that can be the big bad wolf. And I feel that that is kind of what's being depicted here is the wolf in sheep's clothing. But I feel like the invitation for all of this is to use your discernment, to recognize, like, you can see behind the mask. That was what she wanted her whole life, was for people to actually see the Norma Jean. That's what she really desired. She wanted to be accepted and loved as Norma Jean. But she felt like she never got that because she always had to present the Marilyn Monroe. I feel like she's saying to us, look beyond the mask. And I know this doesn't make any sense, but I'm seeing all of these coins, the vines and the coins here, and I almost see it like a mask. Like that was the Marilyn Monroe mask, and she's removed that now. She's taken that off, and she's like, just see the real me. And wolves, by the way, aren't bad. They aren't sneaky. I'm not saying that, you know, Norma Jean was a devious person who was out to hurt people. I don't feel that way at all. But she was a human, which means, you know, we're complex. We have the shadow and the light within us. We get triggered and we don't say the right things or do the right things. We can push people away with our words, our actions, our choices, all of those things. And I feel like this 5 of Coins, which is typically a card of anxiety and worry, she's saying, let it go. Take, you know, see behind the mask, because that's where the connection comes into the mix. That's where we can really grow as people, as human beings. Wow. I love this shit. Can't hear you.
You're supposed to be a psychic. You should know what I'm going to say.
Yeah, well, you know, sometimes it works that way and sometimes it doesn't.
Move the bunny ears so Stacy can pick up. No, I'm just kidding. All right. Well, that was the Black Feather Couture designing a VIP Life, the Marilyn Monroe edition, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I'm definitely going to like doing more of these in a series because they're really, really cool questions. They're people that a lot of people know about, and, you know, they can't sit here and do a reading. Of course, my favorite is always going to... We didn't do readings for Walter Mercado. That would have been funny.
That would have been really cool. Get a reading for him.
I'm glad, because we might have disrupted the time-space continuum or something.
Right.
So it's probably a good thing we did not. You know,
maybe we can do that on another segment for him. You know, another day of celebration for him.
I don't know. He might pop up behind you and critique. So I don't know.
You know what? I would welcome it. He's
gonna be like, You would have said good choice on updating the attire you were wearing before we started recording. Good.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. No, this one I decided to go a little bit lighter to Marilyn Monroe, the famous white dress. I don't have a white thing like this, but
I wouldn't want you to wear a white dress anyway. But I'm going to turn it back over in your hands and let you send us out in the beautiful way that you do it.
awesome. So I hope you enjoyed this exploration of Marilyn Monroe and Norma Jean. And if you're like me and you have always, sort of had a bit of a fascination, and as a woman, as a divine feminine, or as a supporter of women wanting to learn the sort of what it's like to walk this divine feminine path. I hope that you enjoyed exploring that through Marilyn Monroe. And I hope, Marilyn, Norma Jean, that we have honored you. And I'm grateful that I felt your spirit. I felt your energy coming through in the cards. So thank you for sharing your energy with all of us. And that is our Black Feather Couture Divining a VIP Life for this segment. Hope you enjoyed it. I hope you guys have a great one. And until next time, transform well.